to form new cells that hold the complete hereditary characteristics of their parent cells. Artificial insemination, even of a female human egg, is now possible. The real challenge lies in cross-fertilization between different families within the same species, and even between different species. Modern science has come a long way from the development of the first hybrid corns, or the mating of Alaskan dogs with wolves, or the creation of the mule, the artificial mating of a mare and a donkey, to the ability to manipulate man's own reproduction. A process called cloning, from the Greek word klon-, which applies to animals the same principle as that of taking a cutting from a plant to reproduce hundreds of similar plants. The technique as applied to animals was first demonstrated in England, where Dr. John Gurdon replaced the nucleus of a fertilized frog's egg with the nuclear material from another cell of the same frog. The successful formation of normal tadpoles demonstrated that the egg proceeds to develop and subdivide, and create progeny no matter where it obtains the correct set of matching chromosomes. Experiments reported by the Institute of Society, Ethics and Life Sciences at Hastings-on-Hudson show that techniques already exist for cloning human beings. It is now possible to take the nuclear material of any human cell, not necessarily from the sex organs, and, by introducing its 23 sets of complete chromosomes into the female ovum, lead to the conception and birth of a predetermined individual. In normal conception, father and mother chromosome sets merge, and then must split to remain at 23 chromosome pairs, leading to chance combinations. But in cloning, the offspring is an exact replica of the source of the unsplit set of chromosomes. We already possess, wrote Dr. W. Galen in the New York Times, the awful knowledge to make exact copies of human beings, a limitless number of Hitlers or Mozarts or Einsteins, if we had preserved their cell nuclei. But the art of genetic engineering is not limited to one process. Researchers in many countries have perfected a process called cell fusion, making it possible to fuse cells rather than combine chromosomes within a single cell. As a result of such a process, cells from different sources can be fused into one supercell, holding within itself two nuclei and a double set of the pair chromosomes. When this cell splits, the mixture of nuclei and chromosomes J may split in a pattern different from that of each cell before the fusion. The result can be two new cells, each genetically complete, but each with a brand new set of genetic codes, completely garbled as far as the ancestor cells were concerned. This means that cells from hitherto incompatible living organisms, say that of a chicken and that of a mouse, can be fused to form new cells with brand new genetic mixes that produce new animals that are neither chickens nor mice as we know them. Further refined, the process can also permit us to select which traits of one life form shall be imparted to the combined or fused cell. This has led to the development of the wide field of genetic transplant. It is now possible to pick up from certain bacteria a single specific gene, and introduce that gene into an animal or human cell, giving the offspring an added characteristic. We should assume that the Nephilim, being capable of space travel 450,000 years ago, were also equally advanced, compared to us today, in the field of life sciences. We should also assume that they were aware of the various alternatives by which two pre-selected sets of chromosomes could be combined to obtain a predetermined genetic result, and that whether the process was akin to cloning, cell fusion, genetic transplant, or methods as yet unknown to us, they knew these processes, and could carry them out, not only in the laboratory flask, but also with living organisms. We find a reference to such a mixing of two life sources in the ancient texts. According to Berosus, the deity Bel as Lord, also called Beast God, brought forth various hideous beings, which were produced of a twofold principle. Men appeared with two wings, some with 4 and 2 faces. They had one body but 2 heads, the one of a man, the other of a woman. They were likewise in their several organs both male and female. Other human figures were to be seen with the legs and horns of goats. Some had horses' feet, others had the limbs of a horse behind, but in front were fashioned like men, resembling hippocentaurs. Bulls likewise bred there with the heads of men, and dogs, with 4-fold bodies, and the tails of fishes. Also horses with the heads of dogs, men too, and other animals with the heads and bodies of horses, and the tails of fishes. In short, there were creatures with the limbs of every species of animals. Of all these were preserved delineations in the Temple of Belus at Babylon. The tale's baffling details may hold an important truth. It is quite conceivable that before resorting to the creation of a being in their own image, the Nephilim attempted to come up with a manufactured servant by experimenting with other alternatives, the creation of a hybrid ape-man animal. Some of these artificial creatures may have survived for a while, but were certainly unable to reproduce. The enigmatic bullman and lionman sphinxes that adorned temple sites in the ancient Near East may not have been just figments of an artist's imagination, but actual creatures that came out of the biological laboratories of the Nephilim. Unsuccessful experiments commemorated in art and by statues. Sumerian texts, too, speak of deformed humans created by Enki and the mother goddess Ninhursag in the course of their efforts to fashion a perfect primitive worker. One text reports that Ninhursag, whose task it was to bind upon the mixture the mold of the gods, got drunk and called over to Enki. How good or how bad is man's body? As my heart prompts me, I can make its fate good or bad. Mischievously, then, according to this text, but probably unavoidably, as part of the trial and error process, Ninhursag produced a man who could not hold back his urine, a woman who could not bear children, a being who had neither male nor female organs. All in all, 6 deformed or deficient humans were brought forth by Ninhursag. And he was held responsible for the imperfect creation of a man with diseased eyes, trembling hands, a sick liver, a failing heart, a second one, with sicknesses attendant upon old age, and so on. But finally the perfect man was achieved, the one Enki named Adapt, the Bible, and our scholars, Homo sapiens. This being was so much akin to the gods that one text even went so far as to point out that the mother goddess gave to her creature, man, a skin, as the skin of a god, a smooth, hairless body, quite different from that of the shaggy ape-man. With this final product, the Nephilim were genetically compatible with the daughters of man, and able to marry them, and have children by them. But such compatibility could exist only if man had developed from the same seed of life as the Nephilim. This, indeed, is what the ancient texts attest to. Man, in the Mesopotamian concept, as in the biblical one, was made of a mixture of a godly element, of God's blood, or its essence, and the clay of earth. Indeed, the very term Lulu for man, while conveying the sense of primitive, literally meant one who has been mixed. Called upon to fashion a man, the mother goddess washed her hands, pinched off clay, mixed it in the steppe. It is fascinating to note here the sanitary precautions taken by the goddess. She washed her hands. We encounter such clinical measures and procedures in other creation texts as well. The use of earthly clay mixed with divine blood to create the prototype of man is firmly established by the Mesopotamian texts. 1. Relating how Enki was called upon to bring to pass some great work of wisdom, of scientific know-how, states that Enki saw no great problem in fulfilling the task of fashioning servants for the gods. It can be done, he announced. He then gave these instructions to the mother goddess: mix to a core the clay from the basement of earth, just above the Abga, and shape it into the form of a core. I shall provide good, knowing young gods who will bring that clay to the right condition. The second chapter of Genesis offers this technical version: and Yahweh Elohim fashioned the atom of the clay of the soil, and he blew in his nostrils the breath of life, and the atom turned into a living soul. The Hebrew term commonly translated as soul is nephesh, that elusive spirit that animates a living creature, and seemingly abandons it when it dies. By no coincidence, the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, repeatedly exhorted against the shedding of human blood and the eating of animal blood, because the blood is the nephesh. The biblical versions of the creation of man, the sikway nephesh, spirit, soul, and blood. The Old Testament offers another clue to the role of blood in man's creation. The term Adama, after which the name Adam was coined, originally meant not just any earth or soil, but specifically dark red soil. Like the parallel Akkadian word Adamatu, dark red earth, the Hebrew term Adama, and the Hebrew name for the color red adorn stem from the words for blood Adamu, dam. When the book of Genesis termed the being created by God the